Hi everyone, I'm Mandy and welcome to my channel. So the video I have to share with you today is a little bit different. Today is Mother's Day, so I thought it would be a fun idea to make a special video in honor of my mum. I've always considered myself lucky because not only is my mum a wonderful person, but she's also really cool. Because when I was growing up, she was a huge gamer. And while she dabbled in all sorts of genres, RPGs were her favourite. I have so many memories of being surrounded by these games in my childhood before I could even read or pick up a controller myself. In fact, one of the first life lessons I remember my mum teaching me was about the art of level grinding, which at the time I thought was a groundbreaking concept. The funny thing is, without my mum's influence, there's a good chance I wouldn't have ended up loving RPGs as much as I do today, or even video games at all, for that matter. So today I'd like to share some of those RPGs that shaped my childhood. But before we get there, I want to talk about some of the other video games my mum enjoyed. I think the best way to share this story is to go about it chronologically. So, I was born in the late 90s, and by that time my older siblings and my mum were already well into the video game hobby. They had pretty much all of the older consoles, but the one that was most recent by the time I came around was the Nintendo 64. Naturally, Ocarina of Time was a big hit in our house. I played it a little when I was old enough, but nowhere near as much as my mum did. While I spent most of my time somersaulting around Kokiri Forest, she actually played through the story and managed to beat the game. Twice, technically. She seems to have some vendetta against Ganondorf, who apparently never dies, or at least not to her satisfaction. She told me she remembers defeating him and watching the ending cutscene, then going back to kill him for a second time when she realized she couldn't save after the credits. I'm not sure if she was thinking that second kill would really do it this time, but alas, she was never able to fully cement Ganon's demise, and apparently that really stayed with her. Another game I remember her enjoying was Donkey Kong 64. The DK Isle theme has a very deep nostalgia for me. It's her favourite song from the game, and I remember she would often have it playing on our family PC. I asked her for her thoughts on the game the other day, and her response was that she doesn't remember much except for the nice music where Donkey Kong swims, and that she played that part of the game a lot. It's been a long time since I played the Nintendo 64, but as I was recording these clips, so much nostalgia came flooding back to me. My family and I used to play a lot of multiplayer games like GoldenEye, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, and of course, Pokemon Stadium. I remember my mum being really good at Dig Dig Dig. I've got to say, working on this video has definitely made me want to go back and dive further into the N64 library. Another kind of random game I remember my mum playing was Croc 2. I think this one was kind of big on the PlayStation at the time, but we had the PC version. I don't remember too much of the game, other than this Gobo's line that my mum quotes all the time, which reads, "Ginger soda yummy, Gobo like when fizz go up nose." I don't know, my mum quotes the strangest things sometimes. But anyway, I can never forget Croc, and I'll always have this little Gobo to thank for that. The first Croc game actually got a remaster last month, which is pretty cool. It'd be nice to see Croc 2 get more attention. I think it's a really charming game. Anyway, those are just a few fond gaming memories I have, but as promised, we're here to talk about my mum's favourite RPGs. In our family growing up, our main RPG machine has always been from PlayStation, starting of course with the original PS1. So just as many gamers in the 90s did, my mum crossed paths with a special game called Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite games of all time, and even though I didn't beat it myself until the 2010s, I have so much nostalgia for it because I was surrounded by the music and the characters pretty much ever since I can remember. I like to say that I am Final Fantasy VII years old because it was released the same year I was born, which means that by the time I was old enough to play RPGs, it was already a decade old. So I think I'm really lucky that despite it being kind of before my time, I still have a really special connection with it. So much of this soundtrack is ingrained in my earliest memories. Naturally, the prelude is a huge one, but also Aerith's theme. I watched both my mum and my older sister play the game, so I was aware of some of the events that take place, and I think this song really embedded itself in my heart early on, which is a really special thing. I think even though Final Fantasy VII wasn't the first RPG I played through myself, it was the first time I witnessed the power that a video game can hold. Anyway, as for my mum, Final Fantasy VII was her favourite, and she was also very moved by the soundtrack, as I'm sure most of us are. She's told me before that she liked to leave the opening screen on just to listen to the music because of how beautiful it was. Whenever I try to picture the times I'd watch her play, for some reason the image that always comes to mind is of her running around Corel trying to fight the giant landworm, which is a weird part of the game to selectively remember, but it is very vivid in my memory. My mum also loved Final Fantasy IX. I don't remember watching her play this one, but I do remember her speaking very highly of it. And it became one of my favourites when I played it too. I think it's hard not to love. And that brings us to the era of the PlayStation 2. At this point in my life, I was still pretty young, but old enough to understand games a little more and play them myself, or at least try to. I'd say this is the period of time that my passion for RPGs truly began. There were 3 particular PS2 games my mum brought into my life when I was young that I always reflect on as the sacred video game trifecta of my childhood. The first one was a remarkable dungeon crawler called Dark Cloud. So Dark Cloud was a level 5 action RPG that stood out by including a unique town building element. The villages in this game have been destroyed by an evil genie, and have had all of their buildings and residents sealed inside magical spheres that are hidden in the dungeons. One of the major goals of the game is to find each of these village parts and then put them back together piece by piece in a way that will satisfy the wants of the townsfolk. Dark Cloud has a really special place in my heart. I played it a lot when I was young, but to be honest, I don't think I was very good at it. I remember my mum had to make copies of her save files for me to play on just to help me get to the later areas. For this game, the place that always stayed in my memory was Yellow Drops, which is a city on the moon. There's a character you unlock here that has a helicopter backpack, and I vividly remember watching him hovering around this entrancing space dungeon. I always thought Yellow Drops was such a dreamy place, and I was really excited I could experience it vicariously through my mum's playthrough. The second big PS2 game from my childhood was Wild Arms 3. I always credit Wild Arms 3 as being the first video game I loved. As much as I enjoyed Dark Cloud, I didn't know what it felt like to be truly absorbed in an RPG until I experienced Wild Arms. I'm sure a lot of that was because of the incredibly rich atmosphere, but I was also really drawn to the characters. In fact, I remember there was a short period of time when I decided I wanted to be a drifter when I grew up because I looked up to Virginia Maxwell so much. I did play through Wild Arms when I was older, but as for what I remember of watching my mum play, the biggest memory that sticks out is definitely the gardening. There's a section of the game where you have access to a hidden garden, and I remember my mum spent a lot of time there. To this day, Wild Arms 3 is still one of my favourite games, and while a lot of that is nostalgia driven, I do think it holds up as a really solid RPG. I replayed it a few years ago, and I feel like the themes speak to me now more than they ever have before. And it has a turn-based battle system that I think is still very fun. And that brings us to the last game in my PS2 trifecta, which was, of course, Grandia 2, aka my favourite game of all time. I think most people in this hobby have that one game that changed everything for them, and for me it was absolutely Grandia 2. I remember being completely taken in by the story from the moment I met Ryudo and Sky. There was something really special about the writing and the voice work in this game that made the characters feel so alive. And as a kid, I quickly grew attached to all of them. I remember caring about their stories and their journey together in a way that I had never experienced in any other media. I think of Grandia 2 as the RPG I grew up with. First, I watched my mum play it, and then I tried it myself. I actually remember getting really frustrated with Ryudo when I first played it because I was too young and stupid to keep him alive, which is very funny to me now because he's my favorite video game character. Over the years, I started it from the beginning again and again until I was finally old enough to beat it, and it was incredible. For a long time, I wondered if my fondness for it was clouded by nostalgia or the fact that it had so much personal meaning to me. But upon reflection, and after playing it again as an adult, I stand by my belief that Grandia 2 is one of the greatest RPGs ever made. Anyway, it had such a profound impact on me that I decided to set out in search of more RPGs, in the hopes that I could find another experience that would move me as much as Grandia did. My interests have branched out a bit since then, but my investment in this hobby all comes back to my quest to find more turn-based RPG. And that all comes back to growing up with a mum who exposed me to some of the most wonderful games of the 90s and early 2000s. So that is how my mum got me into RPGs. Unfortunately, she stopped playing them after the PS2 era, I guess because it was too hard to make time for them. I really wish she'd get back into them because there are so many more I know she'd love, but she told me in these exact words, "I can't play games anymore because I get too addicted to them." Thanks to everyone who tuned in to watch this video, and to my mum, happy Mother's Day. And remember, my copy of Final Fantasy VIII is right there if you ever want to play it. Thanks for watching. Bye!